Okay, so hi, we're going to talk about the quarantine backyard ultramarathon that happened earlier this year. It's an ultramarathon, which is a race more than a marathon distance, so anything over 26.2 miles. It is a different format than a standard ultramarathon or any standard race. Usually in a race, it's here's your distance and the first one to the finish line wins. In a backyard ultramarathon, it is a loop. So it's like usually 4 to 5 miles. I think this standard is like 4.16, whatever. It's roughly, so you get 100 miles after 24 hours.
Oh my God.
So you do that loop, and you have to do that loop every hour. You have to start it on the hour every hour. And all you have to do is finish it before the end of the hour, and you can keep going. So it isn't for like the fastest people, because it doesn't matter if you can run it in like 20 minutes. As long as you finish it before the hour, you can keep going. So it's really for like the people who can just keep going forever, and the winners run 200, 300 miles sometimes, just like until they physically are like unable to move. So this one is the backyard ultra. It's Big's Backyard Ultra is like created by the guy who created the Barclay Marathons.
Do you want to talk about that briefly for people who don't know?
Yeah, so the Barclay Marathons are like a famous ultra marathon. There's like a whole Netflix thing about them. Very like, probably like the most famous ultra marathon, but it's this like super intense race in Tennessee that's like roughly 100 miles, but probably like closer to 125. Where it's just like you have to run through the woods, and like there's no marked course. It's like there's a whole lot of like things working against the runners. They have to like find books out on the course to like show that they've been to different locations.
It's just one guy who puts it on. It's just like one dude who's like, this is my goal in life, is to like torture.
Yeah, he's a wild guy, and he like doesn't even run. He's just like a crazy person.
I thought he's done it. I thought he's like run it before.
No, he doesn't. I don't think he runs in his life. He's not like a running kind of guy, just like a kind of sadistic like torture of other people who do run. Okay. But yeah, basically like one person finishes maybe every few years. It's like basically an impossible race. But this is not that race. That's a separate topic. The Big's Backyard Ultra is, as we've discussed, it's another race by him that he puts on every year. But this year, obviously, there was a pandemic. So they couldn't have it in person. It was turned into a virtual event, which means there were runners from all over the world who would like set up a camera, set up like their timing, Strava, whatever, GPS system they're using to track them, but the same format. It's 1 hour, the 4.2 mile loop or whatever. And all you have to do is like show yourself leaving, show yourself coming back. There were people doing it on treadmills. There were people doing it like in a store, just like a loop of like a 20-foot room. There was a lady in like Sweden who did it on like a snow-covered track, just for days at a time, because this thing went on over 3 days. It
was a 24-hour thing.
No. So it's the math works out. So it's 100 miles for 24 hours, but you just go until you're the last person left, and then it ends. So this one ended up, we'll get to the controversy in a second, but it ended around like, I think it was 68 hours or something. It was a very long race. So they were over like well over 250 miles by the time the last person finished. It was insane. So it had a controversial ending too, which is the biggest issue and really the most important part of this. That got down to 2 runners on, I don't know what lap it was, but 60 something. They were starting their lap, and one of the runners was running on a treadmill. This guy, Radek, he's like a Czech runner, not famous, not like a professional, anything, just like a guy who had some free time and wanted to do this for fun. And then the other guy, Michael Wardian, who like is a professional ultra runner, like running around his neighborhood in Virginia or wherever it was, who's like, a guy who wins these kind of races normally.
Sure.
So they're the last 2. As they're starting the last lap, or what would be the last lap, as what did end up being a lap that didn't happen, Roddick is on his treadmill waiting to start the lap, and the hour passes and he doesn't start running. He's just standing there. He's like looking at his iPad. You don't know what's going on. He's just standing there, and the race director is like, hey, you need to start running. The time has started. And he's just standing on his treadmill. It turns out he had like a delayed feed or something, or his like video was muted and like his thing was delayed. So the standard IT issues caused him to miss the start time by, it was like a minute and a half. He ended up being late. And then they said, so you started late, that's the end of the race. They said the race ended at that point. He did not get the message until halfway through. He started his lap, because he did start his lap eventually. He got the message like halfway through the lap, and had run another 4 miles, did end up finishing the lap and was ready. He was begging to continue and like saying like, I can keep going, I'm not done. And they ended the race there, and Michael ended up winning because he had started his lap on time and ended up finishing it. But people were pointing out afterwards there were some controversies because he had started like earlier in the race when there were more people. He had started a couple of laps later, like his video was delayed or his GPS was off or something. But because it wasn't like down to 2 people at that point, no one noticed. So it ended up having a very controversial finish. It really divided a lot of people in the community, which is probably 8 people total in it. But yeah, that's the whole story.
Wait, so did you run?
I did not run. No, I did not find out about it until like halfway through, and there were people already well over 100 miles. So I just followed it online, and it got pretty crazy.
Damn. So what do you think? What's your judgment?
I mean, my judgment is like they should have kept going. I don't think there was any like advantage gained from the delay. He could have like just started his treadmill to be like a very slow pace and like walk. And that would count as like starting the lap, and he would have been like fine to finish. Like physically he was okay. And just like I don't think a video delay should end something like that. But
yeah,
I'm not in charge of these things.
You're not, really? Shocking.
Yeah, I should be, but I'm not.
Okay, so if you had to design your own ultra marathon, what would the catch be? What would how would it be?
Oh man, I don't know if I could come up with a gimmick on the spot, but one that I've seen in like one occasion that seems like it'd be interesting, and I think should be more used, is there's this one race where you have 2 people and you just get handcuffed together for the race. So I don't know what the distance is, but like you and your partner have to be handcuffed together the entire time, like through like the woods, running on trails, like stopping to get food, stopping to get water, like bathroom breaks, everything, which would be I think that's a pretty wild way to do things, just like logistically figure it out.
That's hell on earth for a normal day, let alone a race.
It would, yeah. Oh yeah, because you hate everyone when you're doing that kind of thing, so you would absolutely hate the person you're handcuffed to.
But that's like a thing that's been done. So there's like documentation of like people doing it successfully.
I think so, yeah.
Holy shit. Wow, incredible. So do you have, in our last minute or so, do you have advice to other ultra runners? Because I know you do running yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like as far as like if you're doing it, then like just do it and like keep going. But the real recommendation is don't do it, because it's never worth it, and you always end up like hating it when you're actually doing it. There's never any like runner's high or anything. That's all made up. But if you're like already stuck in the process and like committed to something, then like just keep going. Like it's gonna end sooner than you think. It's like one day, which a day goes faster than you really notice when you think about it. So just don't quit, keep going.
It's arguably the worst advice and the best advice.
It's I think it's useful advice.
I guess I'll think about that as it applies to life. But thank you for being here and having this conversation and teaching me a new thing. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool.